Hello, welcome back to The Metal Hunter. My name is Luke. This is episode 3 of Entry Level. This week I am going to be doing a bit of a dive into nu metal. It's something that I've been wanting to do on this channel for quite a while. I've always been quite outspoken about nu metal and about its importance within the timeline of heavy metal. It was basically my gateway drug to all the more extreme stuff, so it holds a very important place in my heart. A bit of housekeeping before we do get into it. One, this is my list. I say that it's essential, but really this is just the albums that really I loved from the scene. There might be albums that I've missed. Make sure to let me know down in the comments if there's anything that you think is a glaring omission. I'm going to be doing 13 albums because I couldn't fit it into 10. Also in the background we've got Slayer, Diabolus in Musica. This came out in 1998 on American Records. It was their attempt of jumping on the nu metal wave, I guess, which is interesting because Slayer didn't really follow too many trends except for this record. The only track on here that really is very Slayer is this first one, which is called Bitter Peace. The rest of it is much more groove orientated and much more creepy and kind of more of the nu metal style. Fortunately, there's no rapping on it because that would be a little bit weird for Slayer to do. Also, if you're new here or if you've been here before and you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure that you do. I am trying to get to 10,000 subscribers in 90 days, so smash that subscribe button. I've got plenty of content. I try and bring out a video every day of the week, so Monday to Friday. I usually take the weekend off so I can get drunk with my wife or just get drunk by myself, either way. As usual, I tried to write something really, amazing and prolific and really well worded about nu metal and what it is. But once again, Wikipedia has beat me to it, and they've got a really good breakdown of what they think nu metal is. So nu metal is a subgenre of alternative metal that combines elements of heavy metal music with elements of other music genres such as hip hop, alternative rock, funk, industrial and grunge. Nu metal bands have drawn elements and influences from a variety of musical styles, including multiple genres of heavy metal. Nu metal rarely features guitar solos. The genre is heavily syncopated and based on guitar riffs. Many nu metal guitarists use 7-string guitars that are down-tuned to play a heavier sound. DJs are occasionally featured in nu metal to provide instrumentation such as sampling, turntable scratching and electronic backgrounds. Vocal styles in nu metal include singing, rapping, screaming and growling. Nu metal is one of the key genres of the new wave of American heavy metal. Now that part I don't really agree with. I think that the new wave of American heavy metal and the metallic hardcore and metalcore scene that came out after nu metal was a direct response to nu metal. Nu metal was a simplified version of heavy metal and brought in more like rap and groove influences, especially with the alternative metal. I think that the bands that were coming out that were more like metallic hardcore or metalcore, like bands like Killswitch Engage and Bleeding Through and Shadows Fall and all those kinds of, metallic hardcore bands or metalcore bands, they were trying to go the other way. They were trying to go more extreme and, more of a heavier style, especially when it comes to the vocals. So I'm going to do a metalcore episode eventually, so make sure that you subscribe if you're into that. Okay, so let's get into this list. Now, as I said, I think it's 13. Yeah, I've got 13 there. So I've got 13 albums that I am going to talk about. I also have some albums that I'm just going to clip in at the end that I think that you should check out. I'm also going to list off a bunch of bands that I think that you should check out that are newer bands trying to grab onto that nu metal style. They're not necessarily nu metal bands, but they are definitely influenced by what came before them. So as usual, I'm not going to be cutting in any music on this one. I want as many people to see this as possible. So I'm going to make a list down below of tracks that I think that you should check out from each album. So I'll name the band, the album, what year it came out, and then give you a track to listen to. What better way to start than to go with the granddaddies of nu metal, Korn. They had a self-titled album come out in 1994 on Epic/Immortal Records. Now, before Korn came out, there was bands like Rage Against the Machine and Faith No More that were doing an alternative metal with rap on top, but they weren't necessarily nu metal. I think that in 1994, when Korn came out with their self-titled album, they really knuckled down on that nu metal sound, and I think that was really the pinnacle for everyone else for that explosion to come. Really, the nu metal explosion didn't happen for a few more years later, around 96, 97, where bands were really starting to get attention. And a lot of the albums that I talk about were from 97, 98, 99, and 2000. You know, Korn definitely brought a grunge groove kind of sound, but there was definitely like very hip-hop elements throughout the album. And I think a lot of bands heard that and saw that, and they thought that they could emulate it. So there's a lot of bands that got influence from Korn. The track that I will recommend from this album is Clown. The self-titled Korn album is one of my favorite albums. It's one of those albums that you can put on and you just know every word. It's a pinnacle within this scene. Next up is Limp Bizkit, $3 Bill Y'all, which came out in 1997 through Flip/Interscope Records. Now, Limp Bizkit is probably a dirty word in a lot of metalheads' mouths, but I think that they're a fantastic fusion of metal, alternative rock, and hip-hop. I'm a big hip-hop fan, so hearing those kinds of genres together is fantastic. $3 Bill was a less polished version of Limp Bizkit, much more heavier, and especially with Wes Borland's guitar sounded absolutely fucking amazing. The track that I'm going to recommend for you guys is called Counterfeit. Obviously on that album they had the George Michael's cover of Faith, but because that's not their song, I'm not going to recommend that, but you should probably go and check that out because it's a great fun cover. But Counterfeit is amazing. It incorporates Fred's screams, his raps, and also his melodic singing, and Wes Borland's wackiness, and it really showed where they were going to go with their next albums. Next is Coal Chamber, self-titled, from 1997, which came out on Roadrunner Records. Now, if you guys have already subscribed to me, you already know that I'm a big fan of Coal Chamber, and especially those first two records. I did a reaction to Loco as a Throwback Thursday for my little mate Benny. If you haven't seen that yet, I'll link it up either here or wherever it comes up. And the track that I will recommend is Loco, which is the track that I reacted to. I reacted to some live footage just because I knew the song so well, so I wanted to maybe check it out in a different way. Coal Chamber are a little bit more of they're a bit of a darker, more gothic kind of band. They've got more, they more lean on soundscapes, and they definitely have like that really chuggy kind of heavy parts, especially from that earlier Korn influence. Des Fafara has one of the best voices when it comes to nu metal. He's got that perfect Cookie Monster growl. So yeah, if you haven't heard those guys, you definitely should check them out. Next up is Static X, Wisconsin Death Trip, which came out in 1999 through Warner Brothers Records. Now, Static X are more on the industrial side of the nu metal game. Wayne Static unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. It was very sad to hear. I got to meet him maybe about 15 or 16 years ago when they toured Australia. It might be even a little bit longer. I happened to go to one of their signings. I was one of the last people through the door, and I got to have a really good one-on-one chat with him. He even let me touch his hair, which was kind of cool. Very, very nice individual. The whole band was incredible. And Wisconsin Death Trip is a fantastic record from start to finish. They definitely were expanding on the nu metal sound, and as I said, incorporating that kind of industrial sound. They definitely took influence from bands like White Zombie and Ministry and Prong, and bands that incorporated more soundscapes and things like that. I would definitely recommend the song I'm With Stupid. It is the main single off that album, but it's just a fucking banger. Next up, I'm going to do Soulfly, self-titled, from 1998, which came out on Roadrunner Records. Now, Soulfly, for those of you who don't know the background of Soulfly, Max Cavalera was a singer of Sepultura. They released their last album in 1996 called Roots, which had more of a nu metal kind of vibe. And then the relationship soured between Max and the rest of the band, including his brother Igor. And I think it was down to management. Max's wife, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, Gloria, that's her name, was managing the band at the time, and I think that some of the band members felt like there was a little bit of favour towards what Max wanted as opposed to what the rest of the band wanted. And then so he left, and then Derek Green got into Sepultura, and then Max Cavalera basically wrote and recorded the self-titled Soulfly album. He got a bunch of other players in on it. I have a feeling that the guitarist from Coal Chamber was involved. One of the guitarists from Machine Head, Logan Matter, was involved. They also got Roy Mayorga from, I mean, he's been in a bunch of bands. He was in Stone Sour, he's in Medication, he was in a bunch of excellent bands. So they were all involved in that one. And that record holds such a special place in my heart. It's one of those albums where no matter what's happening in your life, it can just put you in a good mood. You chuck it on and from start to finish, it's just fucking perfect. I'm also going to recommend the single off this one as well. The single was Bleed, and this one actually had Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit in it. The album itself actually featured quite a few guest people, obviously Fred Durst, then we had Burton C. Bell from Fear Factory, the singer of Skindred, I want to say, Benji from Skindred, I think was on the album. Chino from Deftones was on it. There's just a bunch of cool little, Easter eggs, I guess, through the album when you listen to it. There's definitely, you hear a lot of different voices, which is fantastic. Man, every album from Soulfly is fantastic as well, even though they didn't stick with that kind of new metal sound. I think that was the first album, and the second album they were pretty new metal, and then they started going off into more groove metal, I guess, more like Pantera style, and then they went really, really metal. So their entire back catalogue is fantastic. Next up, Slipknot, self-titled, 1999 on Roadrunner Records. Man, what can be said about Slipknot? They are I think they're the bridging gap between new metal and alternative metal and extreme metal. I think that they're the band that really pushed me towards like bands like Cannibal Corpse and Morbid Angel and Malevolent Creation and Death and Deicide and even bands like Cradle of Filth and Dark Throne and Dark Funeral and shit like that. They kind of incorporated a lot of different parts of extreme metal into the new metal genre, and that record is fantastic. Another one of those ones that you can just put on and everything's going to be okay. The song that I'm going to recommend for you guys is Spit It Out. Fantastic song. It's heavy as fuck, fast as fuck, within the new metal genre. Definitely has some of the greatest lyrics ever, and the video clip is it's an homage to one of the greatest movies of all time, The Shining, so how can you go past it? Let's have a look here. Next, we've got Linkin Park with Hybrid Theory, which came out in the year 2000 on Warner Brothers Records. Now, Linkin Park are a band that I got into straight away as soon as that album came out. I thought that was fantastic. I think that the way that they... I was getting into Deftones around the time, so like the way that they kind of took what the Deftones were doing and then made it explode a little bit more was fantastic. The dual vocals with the hip hop and the kind of like hard rock vocals was just a fucking breath of fresh air. And I'm not usually one who likes two vocalists, especially when they're doing the same thing. But Linkin Park, obviously, they have a great ability of having dual vocals who are doing two different things. And yeah, just this Hybrid Theory is a fantastic record. I still bump it to this day. I'm not a big fan of some of their latest stuff. I think it was the first two that I really enjoyed. And then the later albums, they were pretty good, but just didn't grab me the same way that Hybrid Theory did. The track that I'm going to recommend today is, I think it was like track 9 on that album. It's called A Place in My Head. I think it's like a perfect representation of Linkin Park. They've got the really heavy parts in it. They've got the hip hop, like rapping parts from Mike, I think his name is. And Chester Bennington just sounding like an absolute fucking god. When he passed, I was absolutely devastated. Okay, next we've got this one. I don't know. It is a new metal record to me, at least, but it's probably closer to like a heavy metal record, I guess. It's the band Kittie, and the album is called Spit. It came out in 2000 on Artemis Records. Now, Kittie are a Canadian 4-piece metal band. They have had some fantastic records. They've had some not so great records. I got to see them in 2010, I want to say, or maybe 2009. No, it would have been 2010. In London. They were absolutely amazing live. Such a wonderful voice from Morgan. She has one of those ability to do really deep vocals and then really high melodic vocals. So the intertwining of those two vocals really sit very well over the really heavy rumbling of the style of music that they play. Kittie are a band who look at traditional metal bands and they take influence from there as well. So I think they toured with Pantera and Slipknot, and they toured with a bunch of different like metal bands, and they took a lot of influence from there. So like they're a little bit more straightforward metal, but they definitely have they're definitely considered as a new metal band. The track that I would recommend would be Charlotte. I mean, a lot of people would probably say Brackish is the best song off that album, but I think that Brackish is the song that got everyone into them, but it's not necessarily the best song on that album. Fantastic track, by the way. It's not. This isn't me saying that it's bad or anything like that, but yeah, I definitely think that there's better tracks on that album. Next up, this is another band that took a lot of influence from more straightforward metal bands, but they do fall into the new metal camp, and it is Drowning Pool, Sinner, which came out in 2001 on Wind Up Records. Man, what can be said about Dave Williams? That dude has such a fucking commanding voice. Another person who was taken way before his time. Unfortunately, he didn't get to see the spoils of war from the album. They obviously put out the album, they went on tour, and they were doing very well, but that album did much better than anyone ever expected, and unfortunately he passed away, which really, really sucks. But that whole band is influenced by Pantera and Metallica, especially like 90s Metallica. So very groovy, very muscular kind of guitars, and Dave's voice is fucking awesome. The track that I'm going to recommend is Sinner, which is the title track of the album. Fantastic drinking music. You can't be in a bad mood when Drowning Pool come on. There's the whole meme about that Bodies song. That song is... It's a fine song, but it's just that song is the only one that I skip on that album. Every other one is pretty much perfect on that album. Speaking of perfect albums, I would be an absolute idiot if I didn't mention this band and this album. This was a game changer for me. I'd listened to Slipknot and I thought, wow, this is really incredible. And then this band Mudvayne came along with an album called LD50 in the year 2000 through Epic Records. And the track Dig came out and I was like, holy fuck, what is this? This is absolutely mental, with all the face paint and shit like that. And then I was like, oh, maybe they're just doing a Slipknot thing. Maybe they're trying to rip them off. I picked up the record and I was like, okay, I get this. The musicality on that album is absolutely flawless. The talent of each member of that band cannot even be put into words. Chad is a fantastic vocalist. He can scream, he can sing, he can rap, he can do basically anything. They are all incredible players. The drummer could play with any band in the world, I reckon. He is absolutely fucking phenomenal. The track that I'm going to recommend today is Death Blooms, but I could literally say any song off that album and you'd probably get what I'm talking about. Okay, so as I said, that was 10, I think, or maybe not. Yeah, that was 10 because I've got 3 more to go. As I said, I've got 13. It's a little bit different from my previous ones, just because I couldn't not include these 3 albums. So in 1997, a band called Snot released an album called Get Some on Geffen Records. Lynn Strait passed away just after the release of the album, or I think it was about a year after the release. Him and his dog Dobbs were driving through LA, and they were sideswiped by a truck, and they were killed on impact, unfortunately. Snot are a rare band that are like... It's like one of those... It's kind of like Blind Melon. Blind Melon came out and everyone was like, holy fuck, this is incredible. They've taken a sound and reinvented it and made it fresh, because by 97 there was a lot of bands coming out with like a lot of new metal stuff, but Snot came out and they made it their own, incorporating lots of blues and lots of like almost scatty vocals, and explosive riffs. Man, members of Snot went on to form Amen, who was a fantastic band led by Casey Chaos. If you haven't heard of Amen, you definitely should check them out as well. They're more of a punky hardcore band, but yeah, fantastic band. The track that I'm going to recommend from Snot would be Stupid, or Stupid as we like to call it. Man, such a great record. One of my favorites of all time. Next up is American Head Charge, The War of Art, which came out in 2001 through American Recordings, or American Records. This one is one of those bands where it's not that and I say this on a lot of things, but it's not that I didn't like anything after that first album, but that first album was perfect to me. I remember buying that, and I only bought it because of the label that it was on. Actually, it was on American Recordings, and it was right around the first System of a Down album where I was getting into that, and I was like, these guys are on the same label, they've got a kind of metal cover. I reckon I'll just pick this up as a blind buy, and I bought it, and man, I was fucking blown away. There was a lot of people in that band. There was like 8 or 9 members in the band, or 7, however many members in the band. The singer has one of the best voices I've ever heard, and I'm talking about like within any genre. This dude can fucking scream. He has the closest voice to Mike Patton that I've heard in a long time, except for maybe Greg from the Dillinger Escape Plan. Very Mike Patton sounding vocals. The track that I'm going to recommend is Never Get Caught. And finally, this is number 13. God, I hope I probably counted that wrong, but let me know in the comments. I would be a dickhead if I didn't include at least one Australian band. The band that I'm going to include, much to probably the upset of some people are probably thinking that I'm going to include another band. I'll be mentioning them a little bit later in the video if you know who I'm talking about. The band that I'm talking about is Sunk Loto. The album that I am talking about is Big Picture Lies, which came out on Epic Records in the year 2000. These guys are a Brisbane-based band, I want to say. Queensland, somewhere. And they only released a couple of albums, which were all fantastic. Vocally, man, so good. So amazing. Really, really heavy band. Once again, one of those bands that kind of took the new metal sound and took it into a heavier place. They were obviously fans of Pantera, which, I think a lot of people don't realize how much Pantera really influenced the new metal scene and a lot of the new metal bands. And the vocalist, I can't remember his name for the life of me. Man, my brain is completely shot today. Vocalist once again had an incredible ability to scream and sing. And he did have that, he basically was a poster boy for Australian new metal. He had an eyebrow piercing, he had baggy pants, and he had dreadlocks. And the track that I'm going to recommend today is Sunken Eyes. The reason that I recommend this is because the riff in this song is basically like a simplified Meshuggah riff. Which is interesting coming out of the new metal scene. I guess some of the new metal songs did have quite a bit of polyrhythmic kind of groove, but Sunken Eyes definitely showcases that quite a bit. So that's it. That's my 13 albums. But as you can tell, we're not done yet. I'm going to give you 10 albums that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 other new metal debut albums that I definitely think that you're going to want to check out, especially if you liked my list so far. Now, one of these is a cheat, and you let me know what you think is the cheat when you actually, 2 of these will be a cheat. You can let me know in the comments. Okay, so Super Heist, The Prize Recruit. Now that's the other Australian band that I probably should have mentioned in that top 13, but Sunk Loto beat them out for that spot. Deftones, Adrenaline, System of a Down, Self-Titled, Seven Dust, Self-Titled, Il Nino, Revolution, Spineshank, The Height of Callousness, Down the Sun, Self-Titled, Papa Roach, Infest, which is not actually their first album. They had an album called Old Friends from Young Hearts in 1997, but I put this in as a technicality because it was their first major label release. Machine Head, The Burning Red, which is their third album, but it's their new metal album, so I'm just going to slide that in there and just see how everyone feels about that. And Chimera, Pass Out of Existence. Now, Chimera are another one of those technicalities, because the first record was more of a new metal record. The rest of them, they went into more of the new wave of American heavy metal and metallic hardcore kind of style, but you can't deny that Pass Out of Existence is a new metal record. And finally, before you guys go, because I love giving you as much value as you possibly can get, especially when you're spending so much time with me, so I appreciate that, I'm going to give you a list of a bunch of bands that are taking influence from nu metal. Now, these guys are bands that have been around for no more than 10 years, so they're all fairly new bands. Hopefully you get a bit of value out of this and you find some new bands to check out. Now, I've included a bunch of international bands, and then I've included a list of Australian bands as well. So we've got Vane, Fire from the Gods, Crossfaith, Islander, Attila, Wage War, Crystal Lake, Cane Hill, Sworn In, and for some Australian bands, Void of Vision, Dreg, In Heart's Wake, Alpha Wolf, and Ocean Grove. Now, I know that you guys want to jump into the comments and be like, well, those bands aren't fucking nu metal, blah, blah, blah. These bands are bands that are representing the new wave of nu metal, I think. They're incorporating more of the samples and DJs and more of the groove-orientated style, so I thought that they were all worth a mention. And there's another band that I could probably recommend, but I don't know. I think that they're more of a metalcore band, but the band I Prevail seems to be doing a lot of nu metal inspired stuff. So there we go. I know that was a lot of information. I know this was a big episode. Now, for those of you who love nu metal, this isn't the last nu metal episode that I'm going to do. For those of you who hate nu metal, please subscribe anyway. I'm going to be talking about a bunch of different extreme bands, black metal, death metal, thrash metal, hardcore, all kinds of stuff. I'm going to be running the gamut of all genres that I can within the extreme music genres. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at The Metal Hunter. And I'm also on Twitter as well. I've only just kind of started that up again not long ago, so I don't know. A lot of people seem to be liking Twitter, so you can jump on there. If you've got an idea for entry level, if there's anything that you want me to do a bit of a deep dive on, or some genres that you want me to explore, let me know down in the comments. As I said, if I've missed anything, if there's anything that absolutely needs to be mentioned, let me know down in the comments as well. I would love to hear from you. If you've got any questions for my Q&A for next week, let me know. You can drop those comments down below as well. Anyway, in the meantime, I've been Luke, the Metal Hunter. I'm going to catch you next time. Bye.